Okay, so here's the side-by-side comparison of everything you're gonna need. Well, the few pieces we're missing here, but this is the internal slave cylinder bell housing. This thing goes inside and these clutch lines come out here like this. Terrible. So the bearing on the front of this came off, no big deal. Here is the internal bearing retainer. It's just flat like that. Here's the external that you need. Here's the clutch fork and the throwout bearing for the external slave. And here's the external bell housing. This is where your actual slave cylinder is going to bolt onto the back of this. The line runs up to the master cylinder for the clutch, and then it will push the clutch on the inside of this, causing it to push the clutch in and out. And it pivots on the ball on the back side of this. Now if you look at this transmission right here, I'm draining all the fluid out because I didn't drain it prior to doing this, but that was a mistake. So the retainer will bolt right onto here, and then your bell housing bolts onto these. These bolts are 13 millimeter, and then I don't know, I forget, they're right here. These ones were Loctited in. I will Loctite them, and there should be a gasket. Well, gasket maker is what I'm going to use. Someone else has used that as well as red gasket maker. I'm going to put on my own gasket maker when I put this back on. That's why I'm draining all the fluid out, because it can't be dripping out when you put on the gasket maker. So you're just going to swap the bell housings, and you're going to swap the bearing retainer, and then that's pretty much it. We can assemble our clutch and put on the clutch fork and the throwout bearing, and I'll show you that when I do it. So that's really all you need to swap this out, is those main pieces from a junkyard. Is pretty much the only place you're going to get them. So I'll show you that in just a second. The flywheel back on, oil pan is put back on. Now we are going to throw on this new bearing retainer, and the bolts that I pulled out of it did have Loctite on them, so I'm going to put Loctite on them. Now, yeah, let's build the front of this. I have got this thing drained out enough. Well, hopefully you can see. If not, oh well. I've got it drained out enough so this is no longer dripping fluid out of the bottom of the tranny. And with any luck here, we're just gonna there it is. Now we need these guys. Damn, we're not Loctite. Okay, so just a little bit, because there was some on it when I pulled it out. And we'll get them started by hand. I don't really like using the impact for a whole lot of stuff, to be honest. Maybe disassembly is about it, but for reassembly I usually don't use it, so I'll just get these set in here by hand, and then I'll use my wrench to put this on. Once we get these all in, then we can put on the bell housing, and then we'll put together the clutch and all that. But other than that, we're good. We're putting on the new bell housing, the external slave. There was no Loctite on these guys, so I'm just gonna put them in as is. There's an alignment dowel on the back, you know, use that. But other than that, pretty straightforward. So something I ran into, I guess I'll tell you guys why I'm stuck for tonight. I went to put on the transmission. The shaft here that mounts and goes right into the throwout bearing is smaller, so that throwout bearing is smaller than the kit I got. I bought a clutch set for a 94, I think. 94 or 95 is the clutch set that I bought, because it had the new pilot bearing to go around here. I wanted a new pilot bearing, so that's why I bought that kit rather than a 91. But this kit came with a pilot bearing that had a bigger diameter. So I didn't replace the pilot bearing, I left it in there because it was fine. But when I went to go put on the clutch and everything and the pressure plate, the alignment tool that it came with has a bigger diameter than this, so it won't fit in the pilot bearing. So I can't mount the flywheel in the clutch. So I'm going to go back to the store, see if they have a 91 that has the correct alignment tool, and then I'll just use that to mount it up. That's the idea for now, but this is it as far as the swap goes. If you don't pull off your clutch and your pressure plate, if you're not going to change all that while you're in here, then you just put this bell housing back on, mount everything up, and it should be good to go. We just replaced the pilot bearing. Those are, you really need a puller for it with a slide hammer. This is the tool. You can rent them for free from any auto store. Basically, you shove that in there, and then you twist this down, that'll expand it. Attach the slide hammer to this, and just start knocking it out. Once you have that in, get your new pilot bearing, set it up there, tap it with a hammer, just to get it set and stuck, and then you can get a socket that's slightly bigger than it, or a piece of wood, and then just hit it with the sledge to knock it all the way in until it's flush with the back of the engine. So that's the pilot bearing. Now we're going to use our clutch alignment tool. You have to use one of these to make sure your pressure plate and clutch are all aligned. So you just stick it in the front of that, and then you grab your pressure plate and your clutch. So clutch goes first, then the pressure plate, and the clutch, it is, there's an orientation, it's side specific. I get them from AutoZone, and they'll always say flywheel side on one end and nothing on the other. I imagine most would do that, I don't know. The one that I pulled off of here did not have that, so I don't know where they got it from. But then from here, well, we're just gonna line this up. We're gonna stick our alignment tool in the clutch, and then make sure it has flywheel side. And then we're going to find the pilot bearing. That'll center everything where it needs to be on the flywheel. And then we're gonna take our pressure plate, and we're just gonna stick it on top of this, and then we're gonna line up the holes and put everything in. So I'm gonna need 2 hands for this, but that's how you set the clutch. So we used a cardboard template and duct taped it down. The tape didn't stick. There was too much goo and stuff on there, grease. So I just cut the duct tape to make sure that was clean. Now before we pull this all the way up, we need to put on, well, I've got the transmission in, and I have the top 3 bolts of the bell housing, top 4 actually, the middle 2 and then the top 2. I replaced those top 2. They are T12, it's an inverted Torx bit. They're kind of ridiculous. We've got the transmission lifted up a lot of the way, but not all the way. Now, we can't put it all the way up because we got to get this, the gear, the shifter mounted on first, because it's gonna get in our way as soon as we put it all the way up. We're not gonna be able to get to these bolts anymore. They're gonna be in the way. So this is what I'm doing. I'm gonna put these in. They are 12 millimeter. I'm gonna need my cameraman to hold it. Right now I'm just doing the linkage for the transfer case. We've got the cross member back in. Transmission's pretty much there. I just need to redo the linkage, and this got caught on the wrong side when I was putting the cross member up, so I gotta pull out the bottom end, and then I will set up the linkage for the transfer case, then hook up the exhaust, then it's drive shafts, and then it's just time to put in the new slave cylinder. I got all the electrical hooked back up. I can take this off in just a second here. But for now, I gotta get this transfer case. Okay, I'm hooking up the exhaust. Whenever you're messing with exhaust parts, do yourself a favor and coat the stud with anti-seize. Copper or aluminum, I don't really care. I don't notice much of a difference. But exhaust stuff really tends to rust out very easily. You pretty much always break these studs off to paint. Anything with an exhaust, coat it in anti-seize before you put it back together if it's not broken, or even when it's brand new. It's not gonna hurt. Go back in. Now, all we've got to do is put in the new clutch, slave assembly, that whole situation. So what we're gonna do, drop it down, unbolt everything from the firewall and maybe underneath the pedal. Yeah, we're taking out this old slave, and the new one will go right there. So we are gonna knock out this slave, needs to go. I've got a pre-filled, pre-bled unit. So to get to that, I'm gonna remove this washer fluid reservoir. I disconnected the electrical, and I got two 8mm bolts here. Screws, really. We'll see if there's anything else that holds it on. Does not appear to be the case. Probably gonna be a 1/2, maybe a 9/16. That's pretty much everything here. So if you'll take a look, I have everything's done underneath. The pedal is connected. This is the new slave. Here's the one piece. It's rolling under here. I put some heat shrink around this. I think this is a differential breather tube. Some sort of a breather tube or whatever. And I've pulled it back so it doesn't touch the headers or the intake. Nothing is rubbing, it's just going straight down there, and then it bolts right to the back of that housing. And that's really everything. Now I'm just gonna bolt back down all of this stuff, my washer, reservoir, hook it up electrically. I'm gonna put oil back in it since I did the oil pan and the rear main seal, reconnect the battery, and that's it. I'll add fluid to the transmission as well. I got some more stuff for that, but that's everything. That's an internal to an external slave swap on a 91 Jeep Cherokee AX15.